Hello again, welcome to another episode of the Uranium Market Minute. Today is Tuesday, November 23rd. This is episode number 41. My name is Justin Hune. I'm your host. I'm the founder and publisher of the Uranium Insider Pro newsletter, the only investing newsletter that focuses solely on uranium and publishes on a regular monthly basis. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, I really appreciate you. If you've been enjoying this content we've been putting out almost every day, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, hit the notification bell. You will be reminded whenever we publish a new episode, which is almost every day. We do have a shorter week this week. I will be traveling out of town again to visit family for the holidays. And so I will not be doing a Uranium Market Minute this coming Thursday or Friday or the following Monday and Tuesday. So we'll have a short break from the Market Minute, but we will be back in the middle of next week at the beginning of next month, which should be quite exciting, the month of December. And it's looking like we're seeing a slight resumption in seasonality. Before we get into it, as always, nothing in this video is intended to be investing advice. I am not your financial advisor. This is not financial advice. Please always do your own due diligence when it comes to investing and always take responsibility for your own choices. Let's jump right into the daily scoreboard. Spot price of uranium getting a little bit of action today, up $1 from yesterday, 47.25 per pound mid-market. Yesterday, the Sprott Physical Uranium Trust did not take in any new capital, nor did they buy any pounds. This is most likely because they were updating their registration filings for the ATM, which I will speak about at the end of the episode. They closed yesterday at a very large discount to their net asset value of minus 5.01%. This is just about the largest discount to NAV that they've traded at since the ATM went live. That was a major opportunity for some arbitrage plays, and we're seeing the trust have a nice uptick today along with the rest of the market. Their treasury remains healthy, balance of over 50.5 million in cash as of the close yesterday. Again, that's enough to purchase more than £1 million at the current spot price, and it's likely based on that movement in the spot price today, we are seeing some of that action. I wouldn't be surprised to see them report that they did purchase a bit of uranium today. Not sure if they're back at that premium to NAV, maybe slightly if they made it up. The stock is moving very nicely today, but the uranium price is also up. So more than likely, they're not issuing more shares into the market today, but we'll have to see. Again, since the 17th of August, which was when their ATM went live, they've acquired 21.5 million pounds of uranium. They've raised almost $1 billion, 994 million. And let's see, just over 3 months. As you'll see, they've just authorized the trust to issue up to 3.5 million. I'm going to talk about that more in a minute. Again, the numbers are just so big here for Sprott, and this is a major development for the sector. Obviously, we keep saying that we can't annualize these numbers, but they just keep buying pounds at a breakneck pace. So I think that at this point, we're going to see likely over a 12-month period that Sprott is going to purchase 50, 60, maybe even 70 million pounds over the course of 12 months, which is absolutely astonishing. That's roughly half of the total uranium production of this year. Turning to the sector equity ETFs, neither reported any changes to their outstanding shares, although they always have a bit of a delay in their reporting, usually at least a day or two, sometimes 3. I wouldn't be surprised if we see, if we report tomorrow, that they did have some redemptions yesterday, because I think that selling that happened yesterday looked like ETF flows, and it smelled like ETF flows as well. It didn't seem to be anything particularly driving it other than those volumes coming into the ETFs, selling volume coming into the ETFs, and the rest of the sector just got sold off along with the ETFs. Of course, that's reversing pretty nicely today. The AUMs yesterday resulted in a sharp decline by about 90 million in total AUM between those two ETFs. Still, based on month end of October, the AUMs are still up 82 million, and they have a combined AUM of 2.25 billion. Still major significant pieces of this market are the ETFs and the flows that go in and out. Primarily in a bull market, it's in, which creates that flywheel effect that we're always discussing. But sometimes you'll have days or maybe even weeks where the flows are coming out of the ETFs. You see share redemptions, you see some selling of the underlying holdings. It works both ways, folks, but when it goes strongly, especially to the upside. Let's take a look at the charts. Starting off, as always, with URA, we're seeing a nice reversal today, up almost 5% on the day. We saw really, really big volumes come in the first hour of the day, almost record volumes in that first hour of the day, probably the second largest hourly volume for this ETF, potentially in the history of the ETF. That is tapering off towards the middle of the day. We'll like to see some volume continue on. Either way, not too shabby for the first 3.5 hours of trading here, 4 hours of trading here. Not too bad to see that type of volume. I'd like to see it close out the day. I'd like to see the volume breach yesterday's volume and have it close closer to these highs, but we'll see how that pans out. Sprott Physical Uranium Trust, seeing also a nice day, up over 4% with the spot price up. I doubt they're breaching that 1% premium to NAV. They're probably maybe a 1% discount to NAV-ish, right around that area. But this is a beautiful chart, is it not? I believe the bottom is in for this recent correction, not only in the ETF, but in the Sprott Physical Uranium Trust. I think that higher low, or almost like a similar low to the previous low of last month, I believe that we're in. It doesn't mean we're going to go back up in a straight line. Doesn't mean we're going to see a dead cat bounce here. I think we'll continue to consolidate a bit, but judging by the volumes that came in the ETFs this morning, and the fact that Sprott released the news that I'm going to discuss just in a minute here, I think that we are on our way back to a resumption of this bull market. Looking at Cameco, very similar chart. That's a really nice bounce just above the 50-day. Looks like we're working on a recovery here for Cameco. Would like to see, like I mentioned, a number of these stocks trade and close back up near the highs on the day. Would be very bullish. So instead of going to a mailbag question, I'm just going to address a piece of news that came out yesterday that a number of you commented in the comments on yesterday's episode, which is that Sprott announced that they have authorized the Sprott Physical Uranium Trust to issue up to $3.5 billion of trust units over the course of a 25-month period from August of this year. So that's just under 2 years from this point. The present ATM is 1.3 billion, right? So it started out and initially launched at 300 million. They blew through that in a number of weeks. They upped it by $1 billion to 1.3. Now they're saying that they have authorized it to go up to 3.5 billion just under the next 2 years. And they've added 1.2 billion to the existing ATM to bring that to a total of 2.5 billion. So what does this mean? Basically, it means that Sprott is all in, okay? They don't see this slowing down, and they are adding the allowance for them to continue to issue shares, issue trust units into the open market when they're at that premium to NAV, continue to buy physical. And when in conjunction with the recently announced takeover of the URNM ETF, which will become the Sprott Uranium Miners ETF, this will likely happen in Q1 of next year. They will have these two pretty fantastic vehicles and products that they can sell and market to their really large base of customers. Sprott essentially is saying, this is for real. We are for real. This is going to continue. We believe that this is a market that is setting up for a very large run. We are going to continue to purchase physical uranium and do what we have set up to do. That's my take on it. I also think that this is potentially signaling that they are working on the New York Stock Exchange listing. This is still likely a Q2, Q3 story. I do believe it will happen. They will see some pushback, no doubt, during the public comment period, likely from industry players, from utilities perhaps, but I'm not sure that they can stop it. And I think that it will happen. If I were a betting man, which I'm not, I don't like to gamble actually, I would say that they are going to get that NYSE listing, and perhaps this much larger allowance of 3.5 billion is kind of signaling that they intend for it to happen. And if they do, that's really just gasoline on the fire. Obviously, they don't need it. We can see what they've been able to do on the TSX is pretty profound. But the added liquidity, the New York Stock Exchange is 13 times the size of the TSX in terms of money flow. It really would light a fire under that vehicle and under the sector as a whole. So fingers crossed that they get it, but it's not the end of the world if they don't. Either way, another 1.2 billion to the existing ATM is huge. I do expect that we will see continued solid moves through the remainder of this seasonality play, which should go, let's see, probably for another 2 months, maybe 3 months. Again, I don't bet, and I don't bet on short-term outcomes in this market. The fact that I do this uranium market minute just about every day, and we look at daily charts when I do this uranium market minute, doesn't mean that I'm betting on the short-term moves. I'm doing my best to keep everybody updated on these short-term moves because there's so much happening in this market. There's so much to wrap your mind around. It's difficult to keep up with all of that. And that's something that we do in the newsletter, obviously, is we take all of the news, especially the important timely news that we'll update members in an email, typically the same day when there's market moving news. But on the monthly newsletters, we take all of the news that's come out over the past 30 days and we distill it down to what really matters to you as an investor. And that's what I also try to do with this market minute, right? Is just keep everybody abreast of what's happening on a daily basis or almost daily basis. And with all of that said, I'm in this for the long term. Okay, so I haven't taken profits. We've traded in and out of positions. That's different. I haven't yet taken profits. Will I in the short term? I'm not sure. If we plan to do that, obviously members of Uranium Insider Pro will be signaled that to peel some off if we expect a larger correction or we see parabolic moves. But in my opinion, this is going to be a longer bull market. And for the most part, this is a buy and hold situation for me and is what we recommend. But this is buy and hold and buy on the dips. That's really, I don't like to trade in and out of these things. The moves can be so volatile and fast and unexpected. And every time you do, you're creating a tax event. It just gets complicated. It's so much easier for me to buy and hold and add on dips if I can, if the conviction is there. And it definitely is there right now. So the big news from Sprott, positive news for the sector. And again, this is usually what happens. I tweeted about this yesterday after that news came out, which is basically we see strong moves on the upside. We see increasing volumes. It gets to a point where the sentiment gets a little bit overheated, where the valuations seem to be getting a bit overheated, and the market gets sold back down. Usually there's some type of FUD, like fear, uncertainty, and doubt, a piece of news that will come out that will kind of pop the short-term bubble. In June, that was the Taishan plant in China, reporting that there was a small leak. That, of course, was essentially dispelled as being a severe situation almost the same day, although it hurt the market sentiment and it popped that bubble and started, triggering the selling flywheel that happens on the downside. The ETF outflows started to happen a bit, although they weren't huge. Mostly it was just late money retail that was kind of tourists in the sector getting shaken out. This is going to happen over and over and over. So you have to get used to it and you have to know what to expect. It doesn't mean you have to trade around it, but you do have to understand that when it's selling off based on some FUD, or based on the market just getting a little bit overstretched in the short term, that doesn't mean you got to bail and the thesis is broken. That's so important to understand the fundamental thesis for a fundamental investment. If you're trading charts, trade charts and just shut out the noise. Don't even watch these videos. If you're investing based on a fundamental case and you believe that there's going to be a long-term bull market for this commodity and for nuclear energy in general, then the short-term noise, especially when it comes to the charts and selling based on a piece of FUD news, the latest one was the CRDN news. I'm not saying there's nothing to that, but I'm saying that I think that was the news that kind of popped the short-term bubble and caused a couple weeks of selling on lower volumes. It's really nothing to be concerned about. And as we see, then this news comes out, rinse and repeat, positive news, the market reverses and up we go again. So again, I don't think this is going to be a straight line up, but I do think that this is the reversal on the downside. The CRDN news was a reversal on the upside. We're going to see this over and over and over in this market. And it's important to remember we are in a bull market, okay? And so what happens in bull markets? Higher highs, higher lows. That's generally what happens, with the occasional, maybe once a year, we get a washout to the 200-day. It's going to happen. So just expect it to happen, hang in there, and know that these moves are, these short-term moves really are nothing, in my opinion, that should be traded around in the short-term time frame. Keep a long-term outlook, and long-term outlook for uranium is surprisingly positive, and more news comes out almost on a daily basis. Next week, our December monthly newsletter will come out on Thursday, the 2nd. And prior to that, December 1st, we will be raising our prices by $200. I've mentioned this a few times. The reason is we've had to hire staff as we've grown. Our returns speak for themselves and more than justify the cost, more than justify the increased cost, in my opinion. But if you join before December 1st, you will lock in the current price for as long as you want to be a member. So your annual membership comes up a year from now, you join today, it comes up a year from now. If you want to stay on with us, you'll continue to pay that same price for as long as you want to continue on as members. We'd love to have you on board if you are considering it. If you'd like to see a sample of our content before joining, please click the link in the show description and I'll pin it to the comments as well. That way you can download a sample of a previous month's newsletter, get some idea of the type of content we provide and of our returns to date. We are beating the URA ETF this year by multiples. We are beating the commodity by multiples. Our total portfolio performance since inception, which is just over 2 years, is about 530%. And we still see huge upside. We just had an options trade roll off last week to put some cash in our account. We will continue to do these structured options trades as the market cycles up and down. It's a great way to add leverage without a lot of risk. And that's something that we introduced to our members as well. So hopefully we'll see you on board. And if not, that's totally fine. I hope that you continue to enjoy this content. Thank you so much. And we will see you all tomorrow. Cheers.